I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 84 of the Wheatley podcast. Thank you very much to James Crawfield. That's not the guy's name. Thank you very much to James Crowell, my good friend who I got the name wrong of, for coming on the show last week, for introducing me to all these pop culture references that I had no idea about, like Funko Pop, and the lads here today I probably know exactly what I'm talking about with all this stuff. But introducing me to things like Pokemon, and we were also talking about there we go. We were also talking about CrossFit. We were talking about neuromuscular therapy and all these different stuff. So I appreciate them coming on. Thanks everybody for watching, obviously, and for tuning in today. And if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, that would be very nice. I'm not going to delay any longer. Our guests today are the spectacular lads from Awfully Irish Podcast, Thomas and Gerard. How are you doing, lads?
See that, man? That's for you.
Oh, he got. Look, for those listening on the podcast platforms, that was a big heart just for me. Lads, thank you very much for joining us.
Of course. Fucking thanks a million. Or we curse.
Yeah, we'll work away.
There we go. Well, thanks a million for having us on. Number one, and I apologize for delaying it. Delaying this the first time, so we'll have a good old chat today.
Yeah, I will actually mention this because we were supposed to talk back in July. It was my fault. I was having a really difficult time. I wanted to record a couple of solo episodes just to kind of get it out there and speak to, the people who tune in every week. And there's a whole point of, if you're going to have a mental health podcast, I have to be responsible enough to kind of stand up and say, this is when I'm having a tough time and explain the situation. So thanks very much to the lads for their patience. And we were just talking before about, I wrote out the questions, obviously, in July. And obviously the Conor McGregor incident happened. And I know the lads are very into MMA, so I really wanted to talk to them a little bit about that. And I guess we'll bring it up first. First of all, lads, your thoughts on Conor McGregor in general as just, as a fighter, I guess.
You start.
I mean, he's a good fighter, man. Yeah, he was a good fighter 4 or 5 years ago. I think he'd still kick my ass, so I'm not going to say anything too bad about the guy. But you're seeing a downfall right now, and it's what happens to a lot of fighters after they go through their glory days. You've seen it happen to Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., Chuck Liddell, all these great fighters in their prime, but they keep fighting, and it just goes downhill. They don't win fights. They get knocked out in every fight after that. It does have a serious effect on their mental health because they see this as it's the fighting game. It's what they're born to do. And when you tell someone they can't do it anymore because of their body and their age, they don't accept it, man.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to accept that they can't do this thing anymore, that they, dedicated their whole life to. Conor, big trash talker. He talks some amount of it, but it sells. I don't think he has any ill intent. Well, I say that now, but there's a very angry Russian who would disagree with me. I think he. I don't know, man. I mean,
yeah,
what he does, I'm not going to stop him.
It's a weird situation because not very many in the MMA game have found themselves in the situation that he has, where he's had so much money, he can practically pick who he wants to fight. And he knows who he's going to get the big traction off with regards to dollars and things like that. So I kind of get we have been watching a decline in a fighter. I would never wish that thing on anyone, what happened to his leg, obviously. But I found it interesting. Dustin Poirier was, kind of calm and gracious in most ways. But the karma, the quote about karma, I found quite interesting.
What quote was that again?
He said, "Karma isn't a bitch; it's a mirror."
Yes.
And I'd never heard that quote before. Obviously, no, the karma is a bitch kind of thing. But so what would you say about if you were or are a supporter then, Gerard? What would you say about? Is it very important for people to be nationalistic about things? If they were the flag of the country, that you need to kind of step forward and follow that person regardless of what they do?
It's a hard question, number one. But I've always been a fan of McGregor. Having our boy in there has always made it, interesting because we don't really have anyone else in there representing us, and obviously no one at that level. It's different having a guy who won 2 prelims and then lost 3. But when you have someone like McGregor in there, there's a bit of pride that goes in. Obviously, not just to support him because he's Irish, but there's reasons to like him, there's reasons to not like him. I can separate it a fair bit. I love to see him fight. I think he's an interesting individual. I'd love to talk to him at some point. Obviously, who wouldn't, being a podcaster? But yeah, we've seen something similar when it came to Chuck Liddell. We interviewed Chuck on, was yesterday?
Friday.
That was 2 days ago. Friday.
Ignore me.
So Chuck Liddell was on. He was the UFC's first big star. And obviously, he eventually had to stop fighting, but he kept getting knocked out in his last few fights. And it was a hard sight to see, same as what we're seeing with McGregor. So we've seen it before. Hopefully he has a better ending this time. But Chuck obviously has a lot of regrets from his fighting career, and I reckon McGregor's going to have a few as well.
Yeah.
But it's just that thing. Someone has all this support and all these fans, and they keep going thinking they're going to fix it eventually, but sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree. That's great that you had Chuck Liddell on, obviously, and I look forward to hearing that podcast, that episode. But you're right. Like, there's, I think you probably will have, with regards to fighting anyway, the gaps he had in his career where he was inactive because maybe he went out to get the big bucks against Floyd, stuff like that. I get that, but could he have gone back for the belt? Could he have retained the belt? There was none of that around the time when he kind of was comfortable in the fact that he'd won the two, which is obviously a ridiculous achievement in itself. I'm not one of those. I kind of admired him, I suppose, at the beginning, and then it kind of went downhill. The whole drama surrounding Khabib's, fight, and the press conferences were just a bit too much. I'm a big fan of Khabib. I was when I first kind of saw him. I thought he was a credible fighter. His kind of record speaks for itself, and maybe that was a little bit of biased on my point of view, where I was kind of more of a fan of Khabib. So the fact that Conor was going after my fighter, I was getting a bit, vexed by it. But it's always nice to have people on that I can chat a bit about MMA. I talk a bit in the gym I go to with the lads in there. There's a lot of pro Conor stuff in there. I'm probably standing on the outside a bit on that kind of thing, kind of giving it back. So it's nice to hear your point of view, lads. We always start off with the same two questions. We didn't this time, but we will go for it now. I'm going to start with you, Thomas. Could you give us a short history of your upbringing, please?
My upbringing. I was born in England. I was born in London. When I tell people that, they get this look that Gerard gives me sometimes. The traitorous scum. No, but no. I was born in London with my parents, and we moved to Waterford. And then for a couple of years I lived there when I had a sister. And then I moved up here to Offaly I lived with my grandparents and my family. I lived with them for the last 11 years, 10, 11 years, and they both passed away last year.
Sorry.
And, it happens, man. They didn't die to COVID though, so we were all okay with COVID and stuff like that. But, I lived with them 10, 11 years, see them go, it's tough.
For sure, yeah.
I started this podcast, I would say a month after my granddad died.
Really?
It's just, Gerard and Dara, they didn't know this. We were very close, during the lockdown, all three of us. And we started playing Warzone for a couple of days, and my granddad went into hospital. And they didn't know, but I was just playing with them, and he died. I texted them, but just thanking them, saying, keeping me occupied and stuff like this. And then a month later, all three of us made a podcast together, just talking pure shit.
Yeah.
Talking about, I think the first podcast we ever did, we talked about our separate trips to NASA, where Gerard, you confessed, didn't you piss in NASA?
I was a young child, and I pissed in
You're 18.
It's kind of these water things that go up near the playground, and kids would run around them and get wet and run away from them. I whipped out the pee-pee, and I did a pee-pee. So
okay, you definitely weren't 20 years of age.
I was 19.
Okay, fair enough. So thanks, Thomas. So same question for you then, Gerard.
In fairness, I've had a softer one than Thomas. I was born in Ireland. Spent a lot of time abroad with my parents when I was younger. A lot of time in the States, to the point where I used to think we were from the States. We were there so often, and then we did a lot of traveling, and then eventually just kind of stuck around Ireland, and been here since. It's been the same as anyone who lives in a bog. it's a lot of trying to find things to do, and it's a lot of, I mean, creativity in that regard. Yeah, I do archery. I used to do kickboxing. My parents always wanted me to do a sport. Because there are two. Back in the day, they were two high-level athletes. My dad played for Black Rock College in rugby, and my mom was like a runner, and she was really high level. She got offered a scholarship but couldn't go. So they wanted me to do something. I did kickboxing for a while. Part of my love for MMA comes from that. And after a while of getting kicked in the head as a young lad, I reckon this wasn't the best crack. So I went and did archery, which is the art of stabbing things very far away, consistently. And been doing that since. I've become world champion, national champion, and it's just throwing sticks, man. It's fun. I think it's absolutely amazing for the mental health because it's kind of like an act of meditation.
It's great to hear people coming on and like giving me ideas or their way of helping with their mental health, because it's all completely unique to the person, and I have had to go through certain things that didn't work and certain things that helped greatly, and I found a kind of the perfect things for me, and I kind of line it up that way. And I can imagine something like archery, which I haven't done before, so I'm imagining it.
Where are you from?
I'm from Athlone.
Oh, you're really close to us.
Oh, I'm only down the road.
I should probably bring you sometime.
Man, you're like,
yeah, I would do it.
We could have done this in person. Fuck.
we could have done it in person. No, I was very aware of that, like how close you were. Obviously, because I know I've listened to your podcast a number of times, and I listened to your first podcast, and this is one of these weird coincidences, right? And yeah, I know you've got that look on your face, but I had to do my research. But this is this weird coincidence. Last week, I had a therapist on, a Psych K therapist, and I was just before I was coming on, I was looking for a song on YouTube, and when you get those ads that come on, 20-second ads before a YouTube clip, and it was about Richard Branson goes to space and he wanted to bring someone with him as a prize, and I was like, Jesus, who'd want to do that? And I remember going to NASA when I was 26 or 27, the most boring day I've ever had in my life, and I realized how much I dislike or couldn't care less about space, or the people going, why am I going off on this? This isn't like an attack on you lads, by the way. It's just one of those coincidences that it came up 2 episodes in a row, and I hadn't mentioned it in like 82 episodes up till now. But it's very interesting that you've both kind of mentioned that, But actually, I'll start with you during this one, because you did mention mental health there. So when did you first become aware of mental health?
First time I became aware of mental health was, there was a girl in our school, and she was doing this probably a second time I figured out, but she got bullied because she did a presentation on it, and I thought that was fucking outrageous. And because I'd never heard the term, and I think she hadn't either, because she kind of used it wrong. But she got made fun of, and I thought it was outrageous because she was talking about something that was like legit. Maybe the first time would have been I seen a girl have a panic attack in our school when we were younger, maybe second year, and that was one of those things where like, what's going on? How can I've been pretty stable in my mental health my whole life, and I was just thinking, how could someone get to a point where they're that stressed that they get in the ground and they're hyperventilating and crying? And yeah, it was a pretty weird, rough introduction, but definitely through this, I've learned a fair bit about it, because we had is it Alan from Just Man Up?
Yeah, Just Man Up.
Yeah, we had him on. He talks a lot about men's mental health, because men are obviously affected a fair bit with mental health, especially when it comes to suicide numbers. So it was an important conversation to have. But yes, for first one I became aware, and I've learned a lot since, but like anyone, always learning.
Yeah, of course, yeah. How about yourself, Thomas?
I'm gonna say probably darkness into light, man. It's a really good thing that just happens in Ireland. I think it was second year, and someone came up to me and asked, was I doing this thing, this walk at 6 o'clock in the morning? And I went, sure, why the fuck would I do that? It's something else to raise awareness for mental health and all this stuff, and I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And then I saw all the posters, and I went online and researched and all this, and you do, and yeah, that was kind of my introduction to it. No, my health's been up and down throughout the years. School, fucking hate school. So glad I'm out of it. Really,
I was the same.
you know,
It's
I'm
fucking awful.
so happy now. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's that darkens into light. Not the first time someone actually mentioned it as the initial introduction to mental health, you know, in this country. So it is a brilliant thing that's happening, and it seems to be gathering pace, you know, with every year going by, which is obviously brilliant and very important. So lads, like, when did you first meet each other? Actually, how long do you know each other?
Nice to meet you.
It's always a pleasure to meet new faces. Yeah, just school. First year.
We're in the same. We're in the same woodwork class together.
Okay.
You know, Gerard was really jealous because I was always better than him at it. Yeah. I can make a human, an actual human out of wood. Incredible.
Did you pedo?
Master the dovetail joint was outrageous.
I don't know what that is. I never did woodwork, but I'd say it's tough to do.
Yeah, it was all right. You know, our teacher practically did it for us, man.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. But
very hands-on.
We weren't friends really. Like, we knew each other. We would talk in class. Outside of it, not as much. We never went to like the same kind of gatherings. But in TY, we became very, very close. We're in the same class. Did all sorts of shit together. Went off to Spain, and from there on, we're good friends. Especially during the pandemic, because we started playing Warzone, like you said, and it became close because it was a month, 2 months of just, I don't know if I'm able to leave my house tomorrow. I can play video games for a while. Yeah, so at the time we were doing that. I've since sworn off video games, but you know. Okay,
I know I realize that you are into video games because I know some of the guests that you've had on, there was connection with video games too. And I did have a conversation with a couple of people about video games on this before, and it was again, I'm outside of the loop on those things, but it's always good to be educated. Thomas, you mentioned it already actually about the kind of initial idea for the podcast. What was the conversation, and who brought it up?
That couple of months we were playing Warzone, man, we were always talking. So someone mentioned having a like, when pandemic was over, having a party, getting pissed drunk, and then just doing a podcast, which, like, that's how most of them start out. To be honest, it's let's get pissed drunk and talk for an hour, put it online, it'll be hilarious. But and then Gerard put up on Twitter one day, I'm looking to start a podcast, who's in, and me and I know Dara's not here. He's our former co-host. He left to he's studying fish. Stop it. He's studying biology, marine biology in Galway, and he said couldn't really, focus on the podcast and college at the same time. So, we're still very close with Dara. He's one of our best friends. Shout out to him. But and me and Dara offered. We said, yeah, fuck it, we'll start a podcast with you. And we didn't even come up with the name. We recorded our first episode, and we recorded on the same day. We said, let's do a podcast. All three of us in a Discord call together. We've evolved so much since then. We were using our shitty mics, our shitty computers. We were using the worst microphones. Oh my God, our microphones are just so bad. I had to dismantle a boom mic, like on set. Yeah. A really shitty one that I got from my camera. And it wasn't very long, so it was about this long of a cord, and the mic was there. So I had to go really, 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 really short down on my chair. And so we're plugging for the PC. And I had to put it in a drawer, but sometimes it would disconnect and I had to put it back in. And you get an awful popping noise or so on. Or you guys had that as well. You had the real extreme buzzing in your mic. Buzzing. And we'd have our guests on and they'd be like, what the hell is that noise? And we're like, oh, sorry, it's our mics. And thank God it doesn't happen now. But it was terrible for the listeners. So bad. We've evolved, I promise. No, actually, do you know what? It's funny listening to a podcast kind of through stages. So rather than listen to like first to whatever number you're on now, you're on a huge number up. But if you listen to the first one, which I did, and then you jump forward maybe 20 and you jump forward 20, and the like you say, the evolution of even the sound quality is one thing, but even the way you present it, you've got guests coming on now all the time. How have you, or do you feel you've grown as interviewers? And as people overall. Well, for sure. I wouldn't have even asked that. Yeah. No, we've grown as interviewers. We realized our podcast used to be so scripted. They used to be have 20 questions on a page and make sure you ask all of them in order without the person might have said, yeah, my dad died last year. And we'd be like, really? Okay. And tell us, what was Paris like?
Yeah.
Like we were terrible for it. And now one day we just decided
we weren't as bad as you just said.
no, we weren't. But
that didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. But we've evolved to the point where we just want to have a conversation with people. We had a guy on there, and he travels to the Middle East and sees all these war-torn places. And we had an hour conversation with him about all this place and just chatting to the guy. That's what we like doing. No script. No, don't like scripts. Bad for you.
Let me ask you about the scripting. I was on a podcast with someone else's podcast, and they were the same, no script. But the problem with the no scripting in that conversation, it became kind of stilted. And what happened was I was waiting for the next question. You naturally finish an answer. Like that was, you give that and you go. And it was just too, I found it quite strange. Do you find it comfortable to be in that situation? Because for me, I do have notes in front of me, and it's good for me, obviously, it's good to have notes. But do you not find it a little bit like worrying that there's nothing there for you?
We've done 190 interviews.
Yeah.
So we've got the practice done.
But when did you decide, we don't need one now, we're all right?
150.
150 on that button, was it?
Well, somewhere in between 150, 160. The last 30 interviews have been non-scripted. I'd even say that's maybe the last 20.
But yeah, we just kind of found the rhythm. Like the thing is, like, if someone's a good conversationalist, they're good at having a conversation. So if I get a guy on, and we had this happen, we had people on from video games, and we asked them about the job and what it was like, how do you feel with the fans, blah, blah, blah. And they'd just be like, yes, no.
Yeah.
And we talk about the game. Have you played the game? No. Have you seen the game? No. So what do you know about the game? I was in it. It's that kind of stuff. It can happen. Anyone can be a terrible person for a conversation. Even some of our big guests have just been like, yes, no, maybe, could have, blah, blah, blah. But we could have like a lad, like Kieran Hyland, a random little abstract artist in the middle of Laois with the fakest accent you could find. He could talk for all of Laois forever. He could talk till the cows come home. But some people, regardless of like how famous they are and their celebrity status or whatever, they can just be terrible at having a conversation.
Yeah.
So we find the right people, I think.
Yeah, you do for sure. I had Kieran on twice. I had him on this part of it, and then I had him on a live one. And you're right, like Kieran is the perfect guest for someone doing the podcast, because, like you say, you can let him off and everything he says is interesting. It's not one of those people where you just let someone off and then it kind of goes and you're trying to kind of get the rope back in, but you can do it with Kieran, and that's great. But I have always thought that, listening back to some of your episodes, I've always thought that there was a lovely flow to your conversation, at least from your own side. And from me looking in, my podcast or our podcast is two people, but John does all the technical stuff and he doesn't come on, doesn't talk, or it's just not his thing, and that's fine. And I wouldn't know how to do all the technical stuff. But
that's
for ye, yeah. But for ye, what's it like when you're how do you come up with a guest? Even is there Thomas thinks of one, you think of one, or is it just like conversations across the table over a cup of tea or something?
It is email 200 people every day, and
really
says yes.
It's not 200 every day.
No, it's 300 every day.
There we go.
It's one for every second.
Well, it's supposed to be 400.
Well, I don't. How do you get? I don't like. Well, you know what I mean when I talk. What I mean. Sorry, what I should say really is like, you obviously have interest across. Like you've said, gaming and MMA and things like that. But what about the stuff that doesn't cross? Is that, can you come up with something, Gerard, say you are into something in particular, sports-wise or whatever, entertainment-wise, and bring it to Thomas? And does Thomas ever say, no, I don't really like that idea? Just the kind of dynamic between the two of you, how does it all kind of come about?
Yeah,
that happens.
I don't like archery, man, but I've talked to...
He's never done archery.
I've talked to 6-7 archers, and I'm close to I consider a lot of them friends,
Yeah.
Like there's a guy, Australia, nocturnal archer,
Andrew Donald,
and I've talked to him on several occasions, and every time we talk, we have a great rapport about us. We get along very well, and yet I know nothing about archery.
But it's also a thing of what's going to do well. We're at a point now we can talk to whoever, we can have a good conversation, but is it going to get anything? Like one thing we find is If we have small comedians on, nothing happens. If we have other podcasts that aren't, there's not really foreign podcasts, like ones that aren't Irish, they don't do very well. Like Hard Chats and Hard Hats one, that one did very well. Like it depends. Like some things just don't work.
Yeah.
Like it's like small comedians, stuff like that, and then archers. I love talking to archers, but unless they're coming in with their own following, no one knows who they are. And at the end of the day, how many people want to hear about archery when they could go on to Joe Rogan and see he had this lady on from North Korea to talk about what it's like there, you know?
Yeah.
So you have to stand out, and sometimes we try at the moment we're trying to focus on people who would stand out.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable. And yeah, I'm like in a bit in between, I suppose, because I like to kind of sprinkle it with some maybe therapists and different kind of things like that, just because obviously it's focused on a mental health kind of thing. But I want to actually ask you, I'll do an advert first and then I'll come back to you, but I want to ask you a bit about like the well, you'll find out in a second. Right. Have a drink of water or something there, lads, and give us 20 seconds. And listen to this beautiful Westmeath accent, all right? Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. One mistake. I've done worse than that, but so obviously, as I always say at the end of this, Fusion Training Centre is open. You can call Martin up. I do jiu-jitsu in there and CrossFit. You get to meet me if you come in. That'd be great. But there's many lovely people in there, great coaches, and join up if you want to do something different. So lads, do you because you talked to someone about mental health on it before. I know you've talked to someone about climate change before. Do you feel kind of a responsibility to cover those things? I know you mentioned about trying to find people who will, garner a lot of interest, but do you still kind of hold that close as well to be able to kind of highlight those big issues?
It's not entirely to say like, oh, we want this person to get views, because either way, we're not making millions off it. We're making very little off it. We do it for fun. Now, we have talked about some serious issues like dictatorships, like in North Korea, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about today, we had Andrew Drury on from Dark Tourist, and he's doing a lot of stuff right now with regards to ISIS in Afghanistan, reporting on the issues there. And that's not going to come up for a while because we haven't completed it. But that's going to be a massive, I guess, more humanitarian focused podcast. Yeah. We cover mental health. We've covered drug usage. We've covered addiction.
Yeah. Just to say though, I don't think it's a responsibility to talk about them. We talk about them because we want to talk about them.
Yeah.
But at what point does it become a responsibility?
Yeah, I don't think we have the following enough to be seen as. I hate the word influencers because fuck that. You're not an influencer if you advertise, whatever condoms are sponsoring you this week. Yeah. I don't agree with it. But we're gonna talk to people who we find interesting, and I care a lot about the climate because realistically we're fucked in around 10-20 years where we're just off the radar unless some huge massive cultural shut up.
I've had a changed perspective on climate change.
Right. Really?
Yeah.
How so?
I realize at the end of the day the world's not going to explode if the place gets fucked up.
Okay.
A lot of us are going to be pretty okay, but a lot of us are going to not be okay. We're in a position in Ireland where we're in the Midlands, probably going to be pretty okay.
Yeah.
Like if you're on the coast or so on, or like really in on the coast, you're going to be pretty okay. Now, it's not to say I don't feel bad for people who are on the other side, or I, on purpose, like, I don't know, throw my gum on the floor. I obviously care about climate change, and I've tried to get loads of people on and talk about it and see what we can do. We even tried to get like some eco-friendly places to hop on and have a chat, but didn't bite. But I feel like we panic so much when it world where we panic about everything, and that contributes to anxiety and mental health and so on. At the end of the day, if the water goes up an inch, it goes up an inch. It could be brilliant for some, it could be terrible for others. It might be closer to the sea now. You might like to go for an old swim. But when it comes to extinction and so on, it's a different conversation. But when it comes to just pure climate change, I think for the most part we're going to be pretty okay. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, like I suppose I ask with the idea that with the responsibility side of things, I don't want to guess the age difference between us, but it's considerable. Okay, and I if for you to be if I put myself in your position, I guess. Would I be concerned or thinking about it or highlighting it like you are because you are doing it? Would I be doing it? Probably not, And I guess that's kind of the question leads back to the idea that it's admirable for you to be doing it in the first place, because what you could be doing, like you were saying, Gerard, about big guests or whatever, you could be just doing that, and it would be very easy to just do that. But you're not. You're sprinkling the bit of cultural or not cultural topics. Sorry, the bigger topics into the conversation, and that is, I admire your podcast for doing that.
Thank you very much.
That's all right.
We
Anytime.
definitely try to do it because I know we have a lot of comedians and actors on, but at some point Gerald will text me and go, right, enough, more climate people on. Who's that guy we had on who wrote the book about how we could go carbon neutral? I love talking to him. We had a guy on, I'm so sorry.
And I talked to him the other day.
I'm so sorry, I can't remember his name, but we had a guy and he wrote this book about how we could become carbon neutral. And he tells us like how long we have left, what we can do, how to do it. And it's those kind of people I want to see make the changes and, to implement them. But, that's not going to happen, man. Climate change, it goes against government policies and they don't make enough money. Board Namona goes under. It's just,
yeah.
It's a Saul. Something Goodman, isn't it?
What are you saying?
The guy's name. I can't think of his name.
Saul Goodman from Brady.
No. His last name's Goodman.
Oh, you're right.
It is.
We'll figure it out. I tried to look it up there, but I turned off for this thing. So
no, that's right. No, but that I did. But look, people can go back and check it. That's what people need. On this podcast, I want you to go back to Awfully Irish and listen to their podcast. That's a great thing. So mentioning about, I talked a bit about my last guest showing me some pop culture, cultural stuff, like he held up the Funko Pop stuff, things like that.
Sorry, can I take a call really quick? I'm really sorry, I never do this.
No, you can't, because you go for it.
Pause it for a sec. I don't know if you can.
No,
we can talk. Whatever floats your boat.
We can talk. So, Ger, like how on top of things are you with pop culture? Do you feel?
I stopped playing video games after Christmas, and it's been nearly a year. That was a weird thing because I felt like a loser whenever I touched the things. I still do. Even if I had a mobile game on my phone, I feel like a loser.
Really?
Not to say people are, just I feel like I have a lot of things on my plate to get done: college, the podcast, relationships with people, blah blah blah. So I kind of stepped away from that. So that was a big downside of my mental health, and I put on some weight during lockdown. I put on upwards of 40 pounds, and I've lost over half of it now. So trying to get things in order. Take back control of my life and so on. Because COVID kind of put you in a position where you played video games for ages. You ate everything because you're like, a month, a week, I get to do whatever I want. Then I'll go back to normal. So I'll be pretty on top of things. As I said, archery beforehand, it's a sport I do, and it's in my mind an active meditation.
Yeah, that. So with regards to video games, because they're outside of my knowledge, I guess. But when you draw in people from whether it's the gaming industry or music or any of those kind of what would fall under the bracket of pop culture, have you ever been allowed yourself to kind of step out of the space where you have someone on who's into to do with any of these things that we just mentioned and not know much about it, and to allow the conversation just to go wherever it went? And I know you've done that before, like you mentioned, but when I wasn't specifically asking about pop culture, because I want to have a couple of people on, and they're more interesting in who they are than what they do, if you know what I mean. And I want to know your opinion on that, I suppose.
Certainly depends.
I guess, I don't know, Fabi D, he's pretty well pop culture, like what was the question, like, specifically?
Yeah, so like would you have people from pop culture sphere that is outside your own interests and likes?
I'm not really understanding.
Not really, because you want to be interested in someone when you're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Well,
The guy's a massive NBA player, and I haven't watched the NBA. It's a bit of a weird one.
Well, I don't know. Sport's slightly different because if I don't know what rugby, if I don't watch rugby, I still know what what the game entails. But I guess my problem with right now is I can't actually see ye at all on the screen. But so I'm just talking to a blank screen. So if I'm expressionless in some parts, so when you're talking back to me, I apologize for that. I'm just talking to a kind of a black.
Let us see if we can fix the camera there.
You're back, lads. Thanks very much for doing that. No, what I'm saying is, I'm supposed I'm talking about, say, if you take a musician, I would very much like to talk to a country musician. I don't like country music. I have no interest in country music to listen to it. I want to find out what the appeal of country music is, what's it all about. That's what I asked it wrong in the first place. Do you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying, but don't you think there's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't seem as real. It might look a bit fake. Like if we went on and we tried country music, for example, neither of us are into it at all, and that'll come across in the podcast. It won't look very.
Neither of us are into country music. Okay, Gerard.
In fairness, it wouldn't do very well if we wanted to get a ballerina on. Maybe that's a bit different, but if we want to get like a ballerina on, not a high level one, just whatever.
Yeah.
It'd be a bit of a dull conversation because we know fuck all, and we're going to ask the basic questions like, "Oh, what's it like?"
No,
that's a hard question to answer because you only know your own perspective.
I don't think that makes it dull. I think that makes it interesting because then you're learning on the spot. Like I need to ask, like, I don't know you before this conversation. I know you through the podcast, obviously. But for me to write down questions, I'm going to write down a basic question that someone who doesn't know you would ask and then go from there, because the mental health questions are completely, I don't know anything about your mental health or the background you have with it. So to go with it is, I'm educating myself, obviously, and allowing myself to be kind of, I was going to say stupid. That's the right, ignorant in the conversation more. That's, I suppose, I find that kind of fascinating when I talk to therapists. I've gone through therapy myself, a few different types of therapy, but I had a Psych K facilitator on last week, and I knew nothing about Psych K, and it was educational and brought me along with the conversation, and I was able to kind of give my opinions on whether it would suit me or not, as a patient or a client. And I suppose the conversations to have with people that you don't know anything about, they could go very, very well, and they could be really interesting because you're going with from zero to, along with what they're telling you and the answers they give to you.
Not really pop culture. We've had people on before who we learned stuff off. It's not really pop culture though. I mean,
yeah.
We've had debates, we've had arguments with these people, but like at the same time, we're learning stuff, and whether it be truth or false. Like we had recently Trojan Hemp Company on. We were learning about CBD oil and all the effects and all the positives and negatives associated with it. So yeah, we're open to learn new things like that, and
we're very niche with it too. We have a dart frog expert on. We had a wasp expert on, and with the wasp thing, fun fact for everyone listening, they're the most intelligent group of insects. So when you're squishing a wasp, feel bad.
Let me ask you about that, right? Because I want to ask you about a couple of your episodes and your guests. Why the wasp thing, and also B, they are very vilified in the animal kingdom. Did you dig into that with the guest?
Well, do you know they based Alien off wasps?
I did not.
The film Alien, like wasps have the ability to implant their offspring.
We're talking about a species, not like.
Oh well, there's a species of wasps.
Not a single.
They implant their offsprings into, is it a caterpillar or a slug or something?
The caterpillars,
and it'll look like the caterpillar is alive, but inside it's the wasps controlling it.
Oh man!
So like they based Alien off that whole concept of like implanting, and then
And yes, they come out like chest bursters, the larvae that's inside of them after.
They go on a killing spree for an hour and a half.
Now that would be something to watch. But did you get to dig down? I talked to an animal expert, actually an expert on arachnids and insects, and what I kind of find out and what we discussed was the idea of the Disneyfication of certain animals, and then other animals were the villains at all times, the lions and, the wasps and all these things, and how they're not. That's just the way it is. Did you get to talk a bit about why the wasps were seen as just bastards?
It's pretty simple. They bite or they sting.
Yeah.
A cockroach isn't going to sting you. It just looks gross. A
But
fly
bees-
will land on you, buzz around and annoy you.
Bees sting though, and everybody seems to, because they realize what the importance is of a bee now. But wasps have their place too.
But a bee gives you honey, and it's a big climate conversation.
True.
A wasp is just something that stings you, gets really angry when it's starting to get cold again, and it might infest your house, your shed, whatever. But they're a massive group of insects. Like technically, bees and ants are in the wasp family. For some reason, they're just excluded from it, but they are in the same group. Wasps are one of the most common, group of insects. Full stop. Like the smallest insect they know about is a wasp. It's so small, in fact, that its wings aren't shaped like normal wings. It might be wide and they go up and down. They're shaped like paddles, and they swim through the molecules in the air, so little dust particles, little bits of moisture in the air. They swim through it.
Wow.
And they reckon that it could be stuff that's even smaller than us.
That's crazy. Yeah, but see what I mean? You didn't know this. So my question or point was perfect then, because you didn't know that and you learned all this stuff off your guest. Do you know what I mean?
You're right.
You're right. Dead right.
No, it's all right.
Eric is onto something.
It's okay. He is not, and he never has been. So do you think that having Irish in the title of your podcast helps get guests on?
Sometimes I'll have a guest and say, "Oh my God, you guys are from Ireland. That's so cool." And usually they're Americans.
But we had a hesitant guest.
Yeah. Oh, we had Melissa Bernstein, and she owns a toy company, and she's from Jewish descent. And she's
Jewish.
She's Jewish, and she said, "Oh, I hope you guys don't mind if I'm Jewish. I know you guys are Irish." And we started asking her, was there some kind of conflict between Irish and Jews? We didn't understand that.
But when we got on, when she finally got on, we didn't want to address it in the email. We wanted to absolutely get her on. But then we had to ask, is there some kind of ancient conflict between the Irish and the Jews I don't know about? And no, it was just, I don't know what it was about. She was just,
I can't remember either.
I actually can't remember the reasoning. It was a bit of a weird thing to say, but in the end, it was just silly.
Yeah. Okay. That's. I'd imagine for Americans it might be a draw, and especially the Americans who are, they're all related to Irish people. We know that. But that would help an awful lot. If you were to pick some introductory episodes for people who are listening now who haven't listened to your podcast yet, it's hard for me to, it's hard to pick off the top of your head, because I'm sure, like me, you will have a lot of ones that you really like and are dear to your heart, kind of thing. But could you give a couple that maybe the people might kind of find particularly fascinating?
Yeah. Okay. So we got Steve Cantwell. He's a guy who used to be in what religion was he?
He used to be a Mormon.
He used to be a Mormon, and then he did a load of drugs, and he stopped being a Mormon.
He did one drug.
He did salvia, and he was on a trip for 8 years.
Oh my God.
Subconsciously, he was only out for 45 seconds now, but he lived in the body of another man for 8 years, and he woke up 45 seconds later. And
Jeez.
he had to try to convince himself, around 4 years in, that his entire life was a lie and that he had never been this Mormon. It could be a movie.
Yeah.
It's that horrific. And who else? We have definitely Bruce Buffer. I think that's one of our best episodes.
That was a great episode.
Yeah,
Introducing
I love Bruce,
me.
but just the conversation we had with Bruce was just so good, and it flowed so well. And
It was also a thing if he gave us 15 minutes, but then he liked us, and that's what he said. I'm not blowing smoke up my own ass, but he said he wanted to give us an hour. We only did about 40 minutes because we ran out of things to say. I wish we did a bit longer. We'll probably talk to him again.
Yeah.
John Anik was similar.
Yeah.
But if you want to see us at our very peak, it's probably Bruce Buffer and Carl Baskin.
Yes, that was your last episode as of recording today. But Bruce Buffer, can I just say, was an absolutely quality episode. I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant. And for the lads who listen to this all the time and who train with me and all that, they should definitely get on it, because we all know Bruce Buffer is a very, very famous ring announcer for the UFC, if people don't know. But it's an excellent episode. Carol Baskin, when it came up on your Instagram, lads, right, that you had Carol Baskin was coming next, I kind of thought the next story was going to be a joke of some sort about the Tiger King or something. And then here we go. A couple of days later, Carol Baskin comes on. Here's a well. How did the episode go for you? First of all,
the interview was great.
Yeah, she was good, nice flow to it and all that.
She was good for a murderer. No, she was lovely. She was lovely, and
yes,
people get the wrong impression of her from watching Tiger King. And there's a very good documentary done by Louis Theroux, and it's called Shooting Joe Exotic. And first of all, Louis Theroux he's a genius documentarian, and but you definitely get to see more details into Carol's life. And after talking to her for an hour over watching a 7-hour documentary, I don't know if she killed him, man. That's the
she gave us
all the big question. You know, like the guy was a failed pilot and he was planning to go to Costa Rica that morning, and then the plane's gone and he's gone, and you know, his van was at the airport. Like
the thing with him was he couldn't read or write. He was suffering from dementia at the time.
Yeah.
What else? He had a fake pilot license. That she reckons that his son did the written exam while he did the practical. I think I said already, he had 3 crashes that were known, and she reckoned the 4th one eventually got him.
Yeah.
At the time he was lashing out, he was just getting worse, and I've never experienced someone with dementia, so I wouldn't know full stop. But if you do, maybe you have a better understanding. But apparently he just got worse and worse and worse, and because he was suffering from dementia so bad, is people were kind of taking advantage of him for his money. And I guess they try to convince that she was the worst thing in his life, or blah, blah, blah. And she reckons when he flew off, he was just so fucked up, he crashed again.
I thought she was a very good guest, and she was actually very likable. And when we watch documentaries, you know, we have to be careful of, because they're edited down and the way they are portrayed.
There's a narrative, there's a story.
Yeah, and you know that's absolutely necessary. But when you get to hear her talking by herself for the full episode with G, I think she came across very well. And it's like you said, Thomas, about like, I don't think she murdered the guy either. Like, I think it's a stretch. And
this is why we don't edit, because if we do, we're building some kind of weird narrative. We could have made her out to be murderous, bloodthirsty, but we also could have made her out to be a little angel.
Yeah.
But we just did the full thing, so you got to see like everything about her. We had this conversation with Andrew Drury earlier about editing. Yeah. That it is really like constructed if you over edit or you remove certain segments, and it's just something we've kind of been against since we started. Yeah. We always said it was going to be the full thing, no matter what they said or what they do. We could have someone on and they could, I don't know, they could say they praise Hitler or something, and we're going to keep it in because you have to form your own opinion about the person, and I don't want to be the one sitting there changing it or blah, blah, blah. No, I say something terrible, like you accidentally say your address or something like that. Yeah, I'll take that out, but no one's ever done it.
Yeah, for example, my address.
Yeah, well, this is actually an interesting point, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'm the same when it comes to editing. At the start, it was more to do with the fact that I really wasn't able to do any of the stuff, and I was handing it over to John, and John has 2 jobs, and I'm pouring stuff on him, on putting it on the email to him. So I really didn't want to do it. I had to do it a couple of times, and someone said, look, that was a bit too personal. Can we take that out? Obviously, we're going to take it out. But I agree totally with the idea of having an hour conversation with someone and letting it run for an hour. The people are fully aware that, it's going out. This is how it's going to go out. Like if someone comes on and they're intoxicated, I'm not going to have a conversation with them. So it's not going to be a problem down the line. Like, are you intoxicated, lads, by the way?
What? Funny enough, you need to talk to the guy at OnlyCans.
Oh, yeah. Why?
Because he gets people on who are like drinking for an Instagram live.
Oh, really?
I think it's brilliant crack, but you could go in there and do something really fucked up. I know Martin Maloney from the Hardy Books, he did something like that fairly recently, and the guy was yoked out of his mind, and he got on and he started spewing some awful stuff. I think, as far as I'm aware, it's gone. But it happened to someone else as well fairly recently, and they took down the whole thing. No. Hard chats and hard hats. Maybe they did a skit, and people actually got into the fake taxi, and he drove them up the road, but they were in a rough place, and they're really fucked up at the time, so they took the whole thing down. So you run the risk when you open it up to anyone.
Yeah, I didn't actually know of that. Only cans. Like, I mean, the idea sounds cool, but obviously you're going to have a couple of times where it's going to go down the wrong way, understandably. So
the best thing you can do is take it down, and hope that everyone comes in best behavior.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. So what are the plans going forward then, lads?
Retire? No.
Already?
But,
That's
no. The plan is to just keep at it, man. Just grow the brand where we're, bigger than RTE. I want to be Joe Rogan versus RTE kind of, are you watching Awfully Irish or are you watching RTE tonight kind of thing?
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I got really annoyed about the media in Ireland and how just all we consume is American media, and I want to have something as big as that. Like, there's no Irish app you go on. There's nothing like the sorts, because we're using Zoom. Right now I'm using a laptop made in America, an app made by Americans. I'm using a microphone. I'm in a room. Well, obviously the room's made in Ireland, but do you know bricks are from America?
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the idea is just to legitimize it more. We don't want to be just a podcast. We actually want to do other things. We want to fund other people's projects. We want to do stuff like that and see how it goes. Like, we want to see some things get revived properly. Like, for example, probably won't ever happen, but like the likes of the Hardy Bucks, people have wanted that to go back for ages, but no TV stations ever tried to bring it back. So what if someone did? Stuff like that, even on a smaller scale. If it was a once-off short, shit like that, you could fund something like that. Would be crazy. We're studying at the moment, so we know people who are in production, and they want to make their own projects, and it would be a lovely thing to try help that work. So we want to legitimize it. We want to build it more. Obviously, we're quite small. So that's kind of it. Just keep going, see what we get, and maybe go out of Ireland if things don't go our way.
Yeah.
There's always been a conversation there of going to the States, because guest opportunities, and then it's where media is booming. So
yeah. You mentioned Joe Rogan, lads. Is there anyone else that you admire in the kind of podcast game?
The lads from Stuff You Should Know. I've always found that to be really interesting. Josh Clark and the other guy.
Ariel Helwani.
Yeah, I like Ariel.
I like that guy.
Yeah.
He's doing the right things, man.
Yeah, we also talked about that before. We want to try some kind of sports journalism or some kind of commentary. So that's another thing we want to try. We kind of put our toes in everything. We're like mad into toes, man. So we want to get the toes everywhere.
I admire it though, to be honest, Gerard. Like that idea of, obviously you want to grow the podcast, but it's more than that, and it goes further than that. And that's for me, this is great, and I love doing it. Obviously, I love doing it, but I do know that one episode a week is enough, because I think if I go too far, I think anxiety can take over. For me, this is just my own self, obviously, but I love the idea that the two of you are going to kind of try and build it, and you're obviously two, and I'm not going to blow too much smoke up your arse, but you're two very, very nice guys, very, very good interviewers, and that's the most important part of the whole at the start anyway. But yeah, it's a great podcast, and I'm gonna ask you one more question, then I'm gonna ask you to sell it to my listeners, if you don't mind. But obviously we heard about archery. What else do you like to do in your spare time, Jar?
To be honest, I'm very boring, and I've always been happy to say I'm boring. I just do a lot of stuff for the podcast. Maybe I'll watch some shows while doing it, try to learn some things while doing it. Mad into learning, always open to new ideas, contrary to what flat earthers would tell you about me.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah, they would call me indoctrinated, but I'm open to learning a lot of new things. Obviously archery, but in terms of mental health and that side, a lot of like breathing exercises will be something to get into, because you can get frustrated fairly easy. Good thing to do is just take a moment to breathe. And if someone takes offense to you doing that, that's a whole other thing, but you should try just take a moment to breathe, preferably alone, and take care of yourself. What else?
Actually, could just jump in there. I couldn't agree more with that, Jar. I've been kind of promoting the idea of breathing, and it's great to hear it coming back. promoting it in the sense of I'm getting into cold water swimming now and trying to get into the. Oh God, I'm such a wimp as well.
I'm the
But
same. It's pretty weird, isn't it?
it's so tough, like, and it's great. It's brilliant when you get out. It's class when you get out, but it's that. But the breathing starts before you get in, and that I had a Wim Hof instructor on to talk about it, and I didn't know much about it at the time. And it's a fascinating subject, and that breathing thing. And when you say, is it something you do daily, or is it what way does it? Is it just? It's not like a planned thing every day. It's just when you need to do it.
It's when I need to do it, really. I've been blessed in a way where my mental health is always pretty stable. There's never real ups or downs. So if I do have to do it, it's something mild. I've never had like a proper panic attack. I'm not lucky in that sense. But just whenever it needs be. Normally in a sporting environment, and look, I don't have any bad relationships in my life, thankfully. So everything else, it's always easy to talk out, and there's never any fights. So happy enough there.
No, it's brilliant. That's brilliant. What about you, Thomas?
I've always been big into walking, man.
Yeah.
If you know me, I like going for walks quite a lot. I'd say the last 2-3 months I've been doing those walking challenges, like 1,000 steps today. Me and my buddy Dara, we did, I think it was 300,000 steps in a month, for November and May, I like walking. It's fun. It calms me down, keeps me on the cool side.
That's what I was going to say actually about that. Is it kind of meditative as well? Like Gerard was talking about archery. Do you find that with walking?
I'm not meditative now, but it always clears my head, I guess. Yeah, it clears my head. Gets me, if I'm feeling stressed, so I was just like, I live right beside some back roads. I go down them. It's like calm, no cars or anything.
Animals. We'll go for a walk after this.
Yeah, we'll probably go for a walk after this. Like,
nice.
So I like walking. I like watching MMA, I guess. I like playing games.
That's good. So you still, I know Gerard said he's not playing games anymore. You still play a bit?
Yeah, I still play a bit. Play with my buddies,
Yeah.
In fairness, he gave me the controller today, and he put on GTA, and the things I did, you wouldn't forgive me. So, little touches like that, but never. I'd be sitting down for hours.
Yeah.
In COD or something, but yeah.
No, I get that. Like I get that whole. Not gaming, but with films, like when I was really low and I didn't want to talk to anyone and I kind of locked myself in the house, it was a sense of watching 5 films in a row, and it's not good for you, but it's kind of the last thing you have to grip onto almost, and I'm saying I'm not saying this is what in your case, Joe, but it's something that it doesn't necessarily lead to good things is what I'm trying to say. And I think, to kind of people should keep on top of that. And I like the fact that someone like yourself, Gerard, is keeping an eye on things with the breathing and stuff without, necessarily having had any severe mental health problems.
The best advice I've been given in terms of, maybe it's kind of mental health relevant, but productivity relevant, is pay attention to your attention. Like, are you putting too much attention on film? Are you putting, like, for example, or video games, or, shitty relationships in your life? Pay attention to your attention. Make sure you know where your focus is and where you want it to be.
Yeah, 100%. So Winnie is going to take this question, or not so much question, but, where can people find you?
Want to give the coordinates, like, or?
No, you don't have to go.
We're everywhere, man.
We're
everywhere.
All over the shop. You can find us at Awfully Irish and just about everything. Twitter. You might have a podcast on at the end. Awfully Irish Podcast for Instagram, TikTok,
YouTube. YouTube's big one.
And then just Awfully Irish for Twitter. You find us anywhere. Look, we're just two lads from Offaly. You've probably never even driven to Offaly unless you're going to Galway. You never want to be here, but if you end up here, we're here, lads. We're always here for you. We're always having good chats. We had Carl Baskin on. We just had Chuck Liddell on. We had Andrew Drury on. We got some big names coming up, like
Thomas. No.
Who do we got coming on?
All right.
Go on.
We got Vander Holyfield talking in talks with Evander Holyfield, with Roy Jones Jr. Big names.
Big names.
Cast of The Walking Dead getting on. We've good things lined up, and we're going to have some good conversations. But we're taking time to get these guests at the moment. we used to just do anything. We're at a point where we've done a lot of things and we'd like to go really hard on certain topics. And there's some people who are just experts in that. So going for that example, Carl Baskin and Tiger King. We're having John Rinke on again to give his side of the argument for whether or not she's mental when Tiger King season 2 comes out. So when that comes out,
Is that coming out?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Coming soon.
I did not know that. But like, listen, and I'll just chime in here as well. The lads have an absolutely brilliant podcast. I've listened to as I was listening before, but then when I knew you were coming on the podcast, I got to listen to a lot more going through. I've watched them on YouTube. I actually I listen to most podcasts when I'm out running and stuff, but I've actually watched your ones on YouTube because I actually quite like the bit of crack as well. Like, you know, especially with the Irish connection too, and you're only over the border as well. Like, so that's quite nice to know. I'd like to tell you, when we're driving to Galway, we avoid Offaly. We go in and around.
Better off.
There's no need for that. Do you know what? I'm sorry. And if you want to get back at me, I actually live. I'm not from Roscommon, but I live in Roscommon. That's worse than Westmeath.
That is
sorry.
That's something.
Where are you from?
I'm from Westmeath, but I live in Roscommon.
We have a running joke about.
I've never heard of that.
No, tell me.
It's in Ireland.
Tell me the joke about Roscommon.
It's not real.
It's just like it doesn't exist. It's not real.
That's fair.
It's a bit like Fermanagh. No one's ever been there.
That's very fair, I think. Yeah, but
I've never heard of it.
Never heard.
I've heard the word common. I know the name Ross from Friends.
I know Ross is that guy from Friends. You know, David Swimmer.
meld the two together, and you guess what you get. You get Roscommon.
Ross.
So they stuck him in Ireland.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's a.
Will Fianna Fáil ever stop?
I'd never voted for Fianna Fáil. I never voted for. Well, lads, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I really appreciate you taking your time on a Sunday to chat with me.
Of course.
Can you hang with me for 1 second? I'd love to get a photo with you just at the end. I'll close this out and we'll do it. So, obviously, thank you very much to John for all the hard work he does during the week. To always the same people who helped me get to where I am and to help me with this podcast, my mom, my dad, my granddad, Gerard and Calvin for the music and the graphics. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you would. Subscribe to the lads' YouTube channel if you would. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then you can go to Spotify, Apple, Anchor, whichever is your favorite podcast site, Google Podcasts, whatever. Thank you everyone for listening. We had a great time. I hope you did too. And lads, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for inviting us on. Yeah.
You're
We'll
welcome.
have to do this again.
We'll have to do it in person at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Next time is in person for sure. Thanks everyone, and we will chat to you next week. Take care. Bye.